Welcome to this deep dive. Today we're looking at something really interesting, the potential partnership between Tibet and TATANKA.
Wow.
Now, you might be thinking, what does a historically isolated Himalayan region and a Native American organization
Yeah.
focused on inclusivity have in common? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack.
Okay.
Our sources today, articles, TATANKA publications, even a fictional story, suggest that this could be a powerful force for DEI, not just within their communities,
Right.
but globally.
Yeah, it is fascinating because at first you see two entities with such different histories and challenges.
Yeah.
But when you look deeper, you find all these shared values and goals that point towards a really innovative collaboration.
Yeah, okay, so let's jump right in.
Okay.
One of the first things that struck me was this idea of balancing cultural preservation with integration into a globalized world.
Yeah,
It's a tightrope walk, isn't it?
absolutely.
Yeah.
We see this happening right now with Tibet's struggle for autonomy within China.
Mhm.
They're fighting to keep their cultural identity while facing pressure to assimilate.
Right.
And similarly, TATANKA is working to empower Native American communities, many of whom are dealing with the effects of cultural erasure and historical trauma.
Yeah, so it's not about isolation, but finding that balance where cultural identity can thrive in a diverse society.
Right.
I was really interested by the article suggesting joint cultural programs.
Uh-huh.
Imagine a festival where Tibetan monks and Native American elders share their wisdom together.
Wow.
Now, that would be a powerful way to amplify voices that have been marginalized.
It would, and that brings us to education, which is a cornerstone of both Tibet and TATANKA's approach.
Yeah.
They both view it as totally fundamental to empowerment,
Mhm.
especially for marginalized communities.
Right, and they're not just talking about it, they're doing it.
Yeah.
The source material highlighted the Tibetan diaspora's efforts to create schools and institutions all over the world to keep their history and language alive. I mean, talk about a commitment to cultural transmission.
Yeah, exactly. And TATANKA is working hard to make education accessible and relevant to indigenous populations.
Right.
For example, they've developed programs that weave traditional knowledge into current curricula.
Oh, wow.
It's about bridging that gap between ancestral wisdom and modern skills.
Yeah. If you connect this to the bigger picture, we could see cross-cultural educational programs highlighting both Tibetan and Native American histories,
Right.
and not just their past struggles, but their resilience and the knowledge they have that could benefit everyone.
Absolutely. Now, this shared commitment to education also connects to how both Tibet and TATANKA approach supporting their diaspora communities.
Right.
You're talking about people all over the world facing unique challenges in keeping their cultural identity while adapting to new environments.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to hold on to these threads of connection across continents and generations. The sources highlighted the Tibetan diaspora's struggle to preserve their heritage while facing pressure to assimilate. And for the Native American diaspora, it's often about reclaiming a cultural identity that has been fragmented or even suppressed.
Exactly. And what's exciting is that TATANKA, with its focus on supporting marginalized groups, aligns with Tibet's efforts to ensure the well-being of Tibetan communities abroad. It's not just about survival, it's about thriving.
Yeah, and there's a real opportunity here. They could create platforms for these communities to connect, share resources, and advocate for their rights.
Right.
It could be a global network sharing best practices and offering mutual support.
And there's another point of connection that's really powerful.
Okay.
Their advocacy for asylum seekers.
Uh-huh.
Tibet, with its experience with political refugees, and TATANKA, with its work supporting asylum seekers from marginalized indigenous communities, both understand the need for protection and support.
I was really struck by the urgency in TATANKA's message about the need to protect indigenous communities facing violence and displacement. You see this mirrored in Tibet's experience with those who have fled their homeland because of persecution.
It's heartbreaking, but it's also a call to action.
It is. It's about making sure that these vulnerable people get the resources and support they need to rebuild their lives.
Yeah.
This partnership could amplify their voices globally, pushing for policy reforms that treat asylum seekers with dignity and respect.
Absolutely. They could work together to create a more robust and inclusive framework for protecting the rights of all asylum seekers.
Yeah.
Imagine the impact of their combined expertise and advocacy.
Now let's talk about governance for a minute.
Okay.
The sources highlight Tibet's unique governance models, especially those developed within its exile communities.
Yes. The Central Tibetan Administration, or CTA, really stood out to me.
Right.
They've created this fascinating system that emphasizes democratic values, self-representation, and collective decision-making, all while operating in exile.
That's right. And this is where TATANKA's experience with community-led models comes in.
Okay.
They prioritize inclusivity and cultural respect, making sure that decisions reflect the community's needs and values. It's like blending Tibet's experience with democratic governance in exile with TATANKA's focus on inclusive, community-driven models. Could this be a blueprint for other communities looking for equity and representation? That's a question we're thinking about.
Absolutely. Now, to bring all this to life.
Okay.
The source material includes a fictional story called The River of Unity, a story of Tibet and TATANKA.
Okay.
It's about a Tibetan scholar named Lamo and a leader from TATANKA named Nyla, who meet at this ancient temple called 𝗧𗕕ᗕᗕ𗑓𝗪, which translates to calling river.
I love how the story uses the river as this powerful metaphor for the struggles and dreams of both communities.
Yeah.
Lamo is this wise figure trying to figure out how to weave Tibetan wisdom into a changing world. He's grappling with how to preserve their culture while navigating a global society.
And Nyla represents a younger generation.
Right.
Dedicated to empowering marginalized communities and ensuring that they are heard globally.
Together, they realize that DEI needs to be a driving force for their future. And their conversation happens at this symbolic intersection of the past and present tradition and progress.
What struck me was how the story emphasizes mentorship and cross-generational dialogue.
Yeah.
Lamo, representing the wisdom of the past, guides Nyla, who embodies the energy and vision of the younger generation.
It's a beautiful illustration of how collaboration and understanding between cultures can lead to real change. And it shows how important it is to respect the wisdom of the past while embracing the opportunities of the future.
Right.
But it's not just about talk.
Yeah.
The story highlights how sharing wisdom and experiences can be transformative, suggesting that Tibetan traditions and modern views can complement each other.
It's about finding that balance, honoring heritage while adapting to a globalized world. And it's not just Tibet and TATANKA that can benefit from this.
Yeah.
The story challenges us to think about how other communities can learn from their example.
Right.
How can we bridge cultural divides and work together to create a more just and equitable world? It's a question that goes beyond this partnership.
Yeah, that question really stuck with me too.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the specifics of this partnership, but the real power is in the bigger picture.
Right.
What can we learn from Tibet and TATANKA's example?
Well, one thing that really jumps out is their focus on finding common ground. Even though they are different, they're not shying away from their identities. They're using them as a foundation for building something new and strong.
Yeah, it's like they're showing that collaboration isn't about erasing differences, but about using them to create something stronger.
Exactly, and that leads to another important point.
Okay.
The transformative potential of sharing knowledge and resources. We saw how the Tibetan diaspora created schools to keep their culture alive, while TATANKA is integrating traditional knowledge into modern education.
You know, I'm curious about how this knowledge sharing would work.
Yeah.
How could it work practically?
Yeah.
Would we see Tibetan language classes on Native American reservations or workshops on traditional medicine practices shared between communities?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
The sources don't give specific plans, but they do point to some possibilities. Yeah. For example, they could set up exchange programs where educators and cultural leaders from both communities visit and learn from each other. Imagine Tibetan monks teaching meditation in Native American communities, or Native American storytellers sharing their traditions with Tibetan students.
Wow, that would be amazing.
It is.
It's not just about theoretical knowledge, it's about experiencing those traditions firsthand and building connections.
Exactly, and those connections can go beyond the classroom.
Okay.
The sources talk about a global network connecting Tibetan and Native American diaspora communities. They could share resources, advocate for shared policy goals, and even work together on economic projects.
Okay.
Imagine a platform where Tibetan and Native American artists could sell their work together, reaching a global market, while celebrating their shared commitment to cultural preservation.
And that's creative.
It is.
It's about more than just cultural exchange.
Right.
It's about supporting each other's economic and social well-being.
And that brings us back to empowerment, which is at the heart of both Tibet and TATANKA's missions. It's not just about keeping traditions alive.
Yeah.
It's about giving future generations the tools and resources they need to thrive in a world that's constantly changing.
So what does that empowerment look like practically?
Okay.
What are the areas where this partnership could make a real difference?
Well, let's take asylum seekers, for example.
Okay.
Both communities know firsthand what it's like to navigate legal systems, and advocate for the rights of displaced people.
You know, one thing that stood out to me in the sources was TATANKA's focus on the challenges that indigenous asylum seekers face.
Right.
They often don't get recognition or legal protection in their own countries.
Exactly. They often fall through the cracks of the system and face even more discrimination and hardship.
Yeah, now imagine the impact if Tibet and TATANKA work together to push for policy changes that help indigenous asylum seekers.
It would be huge. They could use their combined knowledge and influence to push for legal reforms and raise awareness around the world.
They could be a voice for those who are often ignored.
Exactly. And that advocacy could extend to other areas too.
Like what?
Environmental protection language, revitalization, and economic justice. They could create a model for cross-cultural solidarity, showing how communities with shared values can come together to face challenges.
It's like they're showing us that real strength comes from unity, not isolation.
And it's not just about top-down solutions.
Right.
Remember, the CTA and TATANKA's emphasis on community-driven models?
Right. It's about empowering people at the grassroots level to shape their own future.
Yes. The sources suggest that this partnership could lead to new governance structures that prioritize inclusivity and cultural respect.
Imagine a system where traditional knowledge and practices are part of decision-making. It could completely change how we think about governance, making sure that marginalized voices are heard and that cultural heritage is valued. But wouldn't that be a huge task? Creating new governance systems is not easy.
Of course it wouldn't be easy. But the sources suggest that Tibet and TATANKA's experience could offer valuable lessons.
Okay.
Think about the CTA's success in establishing a democratic system in exile. They've faced incredible challenges, and yet they've managed to create a government that represents their people.
And TATANKA has a lot of experience in community organizing and building consensus.
Exactly. It's about bringing those skills together and adapting them to create new models that work for both communities.
Right.
Now, it's important to acknowledge that any partnership this big will have its challenges. There will be cultural differences to navigate, logistical issues to overcome, and maybe even pushback from people who are afraid of change.
It makes you wonder how they would deal with those conflicts.
Yeah.
Sources don't really talk about that, but it's something to consider.
Absolutely. It would require open communication, a willingness to compromise, and a shared commitment to overcoming obstacles.
Yeah.
And that's where the story of Lhamo and Naila offers a powerful lesson.
You mean how they found common ground even though they came from different backgrounds and had different perspectives?
Yes. Remember how Lhamo, the Tibetan scholar, was hesitant to share his knowledge with Naila at first? He was afraid his traditions would be misunderstood or misused.
Right.
But as they talked, he realized that Naila wasn't trying to exploit Tibetan culture. She wanted to learn from it and use that wisdom to address current problems.
It's like they both had to let go of their assumptions and learn to trust each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that trust was built on mutual respect, a genuine desire to understand each other, and a recognition that they could achieve more by working together than by staying apart.
That's a powerful message. So what does all this mean for the listener? How can they take these ideas from this deep dive and apply them to their own lives and work?
That's a great question. I think the most important takeaway is the power of collaboration.
Yeah.
Tibet and TATANKA are stronger together, and they can do more by working as partners than by going it alone.
Right. And that's a lesson we can all use, whether it's in our relationships, our communities, or our jobs. We can get more done when we collaborate with others who bring different viewpoints and experiences to the table.
Another key takeaway is the importance of cultural preservation.
Huh.
Both Tibet and TATANKA are very protective of their cultural heritage, and they see it as a core part of who they are.
And that's something we should all value no matter our background.
Right.
It's about respecting and honoring the traditions and values that make us who we are.
And it's not just about preserving the past.
Right.
It's about bringing those traditions into the present and future. It's about finding ways to make those traditions relevant and meaningful in a changing world.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between tradition and innovation.
And finally, I think it's important to remember the power of education.
Yeah.
Both Tibet and TATANKA believe that education is key to empowerment, and they're committed to making sure everyone has access to quality education.
Right, and that's something we should all be fighting for. Education is the foundation for a fair and just society.
Yep.
And it's crucial for individual and collective growth.
Absolutely.
It's inspiring to see how Tibet and TATANKA are putting these principles into action, but it also makes you wonder, how can we as individuals contribute to creating a more inclusive and equitable world? It feels like such a huge task sometimes.
You know, that feeling is exactly what the story of Lhamo and Nyla addresses.
Mm-hmm.
They both felt a responsibility, even a burden, to protect their cultures and advocate for their communities. But their meeting at the Calling River wasn't about finding all the answers. It was about realizing the power of shared purpose.
It's like that African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Right.
They realized that they didn't have to carry the weight of the world on their shoulders alone.
Exactly. And that's a really important point for our listeners to get.
Okay.
You don't have to solve these big problems like inequality or injustice all by yourself.
Right.
Start by looking for those calling rivers in your own life. Where do your passions connect with the needs of your community? What unique skills or experiences can you bring to the table?
It's about finding those points of connection where you can make a real difference.
Yeah.
It could be volunteering at a local organization, mentoring a young person, or even just having open and honest conversations with people from different backgrounds.
And don't underestimate the power of simply educating yourself about the challenges faced by marginalized communities.
Right.
Reading books, listening to podcasts like this one, and engaging with diverse perspectives can help you understand more and inspire you to take action.
It's like that saying, knowledge is power, but knowledge without action is like a book that's never been read. It's using that knowledge that really makes a difference.
Absolutely. And remember, creating a more inclusive and equitable world isn't just about big actions. It's about those everyday acts of kindness, empathy, and understanding. It's about challenging our own biases, speaking up against injustice, and supporting those who are marginalized.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the potential partnership between Tibet and TATANKA, I'm left feeling hopeful.
Yeah.
It's not just about what they can achieve, but about what we can all achieve when we embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion.
And the great thing is these principles aren't limited to specific cultures or communities. They're universal values that go beyond borders and backgrounds.
It's a reminder that we're all connected and that building a better world means working together, learning from each other, and supporting one another. So as you go about your day, think about how you can be a bridge builder, a knowledge sharer, and an advocate for a more just and equitable world.
Remember, the calling river is waiting. The question is, will you answer its call?
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it's given you something to think about and inspired you to create positive change in your own part of the world.
Yeah, it's really inspiring to see Tibet and TATANKA putting those principles into action.
But it also makes you think, how can we, like, as individuals, contribute to creating a more inclusive and equitable world? It feels like such a big task sometimes, you know?
Yeah, I think that feeling is what the story of Lhamo and Nyla really gets at. They both felt this sense of responsibility, like a burden even, to protect their cultures and speak up for their communities. But when they met at the Calling River, it wasn't about finding all the answers. It was about recognizing the power of working together.
Yeah, it's like that saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Exactly.
They realized they didn't have to do it all alone.
Right. And that's so important for everyone listening.
Okay.
You don't have to solve huge problems like inequality or injustice all by yourself.
Right.
Start by looking for those calling rivers in your own life. Where do your passions and the needs of your community come together? What special skills or experiences do you have that you can offer?
It's about finding those points where you can really make a difference. It could be volunteering, mentoring someone, or just having honest conversations with people from different backgrounds.
And don't forget the power of simply learning about the challenges that marginalized communities face.
Right.
Reading books, listening to podcasts, and really engaging with diverse viewpoints can broaden your understanding and inspire you to act.
Yeah, it's like knowledge is power, but knowledge without action is useless. It's using what you know that really matters.
Exactly. And remember, creating a more inclusive and equitable world isn't just about grand gestures. It's about those everyday acts of kindness, empathy, and understanding.
Right.
It's about checking our own biases, speaking up against what's wrong, and supporting those who are marginalized.
So as we finish up this deep dive into this potential partnership between Tibet and TATANKA, I'm left feeling hopeful.
Me too.
It's not just about what they can do, but about what we can all do if we embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion.
And the best part is that these principles aren't limited to any one culture or community.
Mm.
They're universal values that go beyond borders and backgrounds.
Yeah, it's a reminder that we're all connected and that to make the world better, we have to work together, learn from each other, and support each other.
Exactly.
So as you go through your day, think about how you can be a bridge builder. Share what you know and speak up for a more just and equitable world.
Remember, the calling river is out there.
Yeah.
The question is, will you answer?
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it's given you some things to think about and inspired you to make positive change in your own corner of the world.